Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to the thrilling Von Manor, where it's another exciting episode of the books that time forgot. Yes, it's the books that time forgot, where me and my pal Roger over here will go through 2 boxes of books. Most of my books are in boxes at the moment, and have been for a little while. And we're going through all of my books, 2 boxes at a time. I do see the end in sight, though. I was going through my boxes back there, where they're at. And I think we've got a few more weeks. We've got a few more weeks of this. But the end is in sight of the books that time forgot, which will be sad when we reach that tragic day. I know what you're thinking. You should get more books. That's a good idea. I'm glad you thought of that. So let's go through 2 more of my boxes of books and see what treasures lurk inside. I expected more books in this first box because it's heavy as hell. So I figured it had to be packed, but it's not. But I can see why it's so heavy. This book, I'm not sure how I forgot about it when I did my biggest books video. Because this is one of my biggest books. I forgot about it. I forgot to put it in that video. But it's enormous. This is the history of World War II by Lieutenant Colonel E. Bauer. This should just be called the big ass history of World War II because it's big ass. It's full of illustrations, packed full of photographs and maps and all kinds of other cool stuff. I mean, it's just, if you're interested in World War II, this one is a great book to have. It is just so cool. It's got so much stuff, so many photographs from the war, so much information packed into this giant volume, maps and troop movements and more photographs. Even more photographs. I mean, every page has illustrations in it. It's huge, this book. And it's really awesome. And I'm glad I have it. It's just enormous. It's just so big. And it's all like glossy paper. So this thing is really heavy. Good thing I'm so incredibly strong. The next book is also a history book. But this is kind of a history book. It's an old-timey history book from a school. I don't remember where I got it. Don't know how I got it, but it has like somebody's notes in there from school. Still has their notes in there. And it's got random papers and cards and things. And it also has, oops, don't want to tear their assignment here. They have a school assignment, which they stapled into the book. So, yeah, an old school book, complete with an old school assignment in there. So that's kind of cool. So that's that. Next, we have another history, but it's a different kind. This is the history of Superman. It's an old history of Superman from 1998. It's either 97 or 98. Look at that. George Reeves Superman shirt. The title of this is The Complete History, the Life and Times of the Man of Steel. It's a really cool book. It's got a lot of cool pictures in it. It does give Doc Savage some credit, which it should, because, yeah, it's got the shadow down there. Superheroes took a lot from the pulps, so I'm glad that they included that. Got original sketches. There's Superman before they decided to put him in his Superman costume. The Superman of America. I mean, there's just all kinds of cool stuff in this volume. Here's some stuff from the cartoon. The old cartoon. They reproduce a whole story in here. So it's really cool, of course. The Adventures of Superman. So this is a great book. Really, really good book. I was happy to find that again. Next we have Into Thin Air by John Krakauer, the illustrated edition. I got this a number of years ago from Justin at This Just In. So many years ago now that the plastic is starting to darken. It's got a plastic dust cover that's starting to darken up. The book is amazing though. Really, this is a really nice illustrated edition about this mountaineering trip gone terribly wrong. It's really a riveting story. And this illustrated edition that Justin gave me is great. So I might read it again because I've had this packed away for a number of years. Next I have The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. A very depressing book by William L. Scherer. Got some big map there. It's a very big book. I found it depressing. So I probably won't be reading this again anytime soon, even though it is a quality history. A little dated by now in a number of ways, but I could recommend it as long as you remember when it was written. Also, I've got The Lupus Encyclopedia, a comprehensive guide for patients and families, which I picked up when I found out I had lupus because I wanted to know what the hell was going on with me. And I'm glad I did. Lots of information in this book. Next we've got, this is kind of funny, this is the Van Hoffman brothers' big damn book of sheer manliness. This is the Van Hoffman brothers' idea of what sheer manliness is. Who are the Van Hoffman brothers? I don't remember. But they did this book where they talk, well, they got baseball in here. They think baseball is a manly thing. I suppose that it is. I like baseball an awful lot. You don't have to be a man to like it. But it also has the women who kill us, old-timey women that they liked, the Van Hoffman brothers. Barbecues, that's a manly thing, apparently. Buck knives are manly, so they stuck those in here because, you know, that is a manly thing. They put The Stage to Lordsburg by Ernest Haycox in here because that was the story that turned into Stagecoach. So that was kind of a cool thing to put in there. They've got the John Ford Stock Company in here. John Ford, who did a bunch of westerns, and according to them, the manliest movie of all time is Spartacus. Spartacus, I loved you like you was my own father, Spartacus. Yeah. That was him. Tony Curtis was in this movie. And a lot of facts and information about Spartacus, which was a great movie. I'm not sure if it was the manliest movie of all time, but they liked it. And yeah, they have stuff. This they think is a very manly thing, this dog playing cards poster, which I'm surprised I don't have this in the library here. I should probably rectify that. Anyway, this is a lot of fun. Next, this is very random. We've got 2 volumes of Ben Gally's The Chasing Graves trilogy. I read the first book. This is the second book, Grim Solace, which I have not read. And I have not read the third book, Breaking Chaos. I liked the first book, but apparently not enough to actually read the second and third books, which I have. I just haven't read, and to be honest, will I read them? Probably not. We'll see. Next, we have a beat-up old modern library copy of The Red and the Black, because you need a bunch of copies of The Red and the Black in your life, by Stendhal. Can't just have one. No, gotta have lots. So, The Red and the Black. Modern Library by Stendhal. And now, of course, I don't have Robert E. Howard in here. I don't know how that happened, but there's no Robert E. Howard in this box, which is crazy. But I do have Wayne D. Overholser's Buckskin Man, a book that looks so cool, I'm going to keep it out. Hold this for me, Roger, because I want to read that just because it looks so cool. We got more Max Brand. This snuck in from last week, I think. Free Range Lanning by Max Brand. Then we've got Ralph Cotton's Hangman's Choice. Ralph Cotton's Hangman's Choice. Very random box. And Brian Garfield, the author of Death Wish, wrote this, Apache Canyon. Apache Canyon. And Apache Canyon is the last book in this box. So let's get to the next box. Where did I put that box? Roger! Hey, did you see the box, Roger? All right, I found that box, and now let's get on to the second box that I've got here to look through in the books that time forgot. Are you ready, Roger? Roger seems more ready than usual. Okay, let's go through this box. Okay, so the first thing in this box is Earthman, Come Home by James Blish. This is an old book club edition of this book, Earthman, Come Home by James Blish. Look how cool James Blish looked. Look at this young guy, James Blish, back in the olden days. Earthman, Come Home by James Blish. That's pretty cool. I see we've got some randomness in this box as well. Septimus Severus, The African Emperor by Anthony R. Burley. Here we go. A book on Septimus Severus. And we've got a little history. It looks like this is Ancient Greece, From Prehistoric to Hellenistic Times by Thomas R. Martin. This is a smaller Greek history, but from what I remember, it was decent. I remember this being a decent book. Although, admittedly, it's been a while since I read that. Okay, this is something I've actually been looking for, so I'm glad I found it. This is Journal of the Gun Years by Richard Matheson. So, I don't know if you saw the other day when I talked about this book up here, I Am Legend. I got the Folio Society edition from the Bookish Report, sent me that. And I mentioned in the video I did on that I'm trying to find the best editions that I can get of my 100 favorite books. And so I've decided that I'm going to do that slowly. And every time I get the nicest edition I could find or get my hands on of one of my 100 favorite books, I'll talk about it. And so I've already done that with I Am Legend. I'm not going to do this in any kind of order. But there are some books that you just can't find in really, really nice editions. So you have to find the best edition you can. And in this one, this is probably the best edition of this book that I'm going to be able to find. This is a first edition of this novel, the first edition hardcover from Evans. They printed a series of Western novels. And this was one, Journal of the Gun Years. The only other editions I've seen this in are paperback editions. So this would be probably the best edition of this book I can get my hands on. So I will talk about this sometime in the future when I do the video on it. Can you hold on to this, Roger? Put that on top of Buckskin Man there. So I needed that one. Here is Gabriel Garcia Marquez, 100 Years of Solitude. Many different opinions on this book. I liked it. I was really impressed by this book. I liked it a lot. I know not everybody was impressed by that one, but I was. I thought it was pretty darn good. Which is more than I can say for Poor Armadale by Wilkie Collins. And yet I've got a couple different editions of this. I've got a Penguin edition, and I've got Armadale, the Dover edition from Wilkie Collins. This is probably a better edition, the Dover one, believe it or not, because this one is a duplicate of the original. And it has all of these original illustrations in it from the first version of Armadale. I mean, Armadale wasn't terrible. It was just ridiculously melodramatic and over the top, the way Wilkie Collins can be. Maybe I just wasn't in the mood for that, or it was just too much for whatever reason, but I might give Armadale another shot. Let me know, anybody who's read it, what you think of it. You might have liked it more than me. Okay, what else is in here? This is a beat-up old library copy of Thucydides and Herodotus. This is from the Great Books of the Western World series that the Encyclopedia Britannica put out. And this is an old library copy, obviously, that I must have got just for cheap. and all double columns, has both, so it could fit both Herodotus and Thucydides in here. I have way too many copies of those books. I'm going to do something about that at some point. Oh, look, it's our old pal, Michael Grant. We've got the Antonines by Michael Grant. The Antonines by Michael Grant. This, I don't know even why I have this really, because I don't need more Lovecraft. This is H.P. Lovecraft Tales of Horror. This is from Canterbury. This is the Canterbury Classics edition of H.P. Lovecraft Tales of Horror. It's a little beat up. It's not in the best shape. I picked it up used. And I think they've got actually a different looking edition of this now. I don't think it looks like this anymore, their edition of H.P. Lovecraft. The selection is great. So you can get the Canterbury Classics edition of H.P. Lovecraft, and if you do that, you're going to get everything really great that he wrote. A lot of really good stuff in here. All the Cthulhu mythos. You've got Charles Dexter Ward. You have the Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath in here. Reanimator. I mean, just so many great stories in this. So if you have the Canterbury Classics edition of Lovecraft, you've got some good stuff. And they used H.T. Joshi's corrected text in that too. So another good reason to have it. Here is the complete tales and poems of Edgar Allan Poe, because you got to have a bunch of different copies of this. This one used to be my main one, but it suffered a tragic accident. My old, aptly named cat, Dante, knocked some things over on a table one day. Not this. But as I was reaching over to pick up some of those things, I knocked this off the table. And it got kind of all beat up at the back. So I blame Dante, not my own clumsiness. He was a great cat, Dante. So yeah, the complete tales and poems of Edgar Allan Poe, the beat up version that I've still got hanging around. I've got to get rid of some of these extra books. Okay, now I've got a whole series. We'll start with this one. This is the I've got 3 books in this series. This is the Classic Horror Collection Anthology. This is from... It's a pretty cool book, actually. It's from Sirius Press. The odd thing about this, it's a collection of great horror stories in it. You've got everybody. Bram Stoker in here. You've got... Who's in here? H.P. Lovecraft, Edgar Allan Poe, William Hope Hodgson. And more than just one story from each author. Robert Louis Stevenson has 2. Arthur Machen has 2. M.R. James has 4. Bram Stoker has 3. How much does Lovecraft has 5 stories in this volume? So it's a great anthology. Who the editor is, who knows? I don't think... Is there even an introduction? There is an introduction, but it is by anonymous. So the one thing I don't like about this book is that it's so anonymous. It looks great. I love that cover style. I would have liked it if I knew who put it together. You take the dust jacket off, it looks exactly the same. But it's a good collection, and it's nicely done. So this is a good anthology. I wish I knew who did it. The same people did the classic science fiction anthology. Jack London, H.G. Wells, Jules Verne. So it's the old-timey stuff. I don't think there's any Isaac Asimov or anybody like that. I think this is delegated to the public domain, which means if they didn't have to pay for the stories, they could put them in here. So that means it's pretty old stuff. In the classic book of science fiction. It's pretty classic. That is true. And now I've got the classic fantasy collection. You do have H.P. Lovecraft and Robert E. Howard in here, of course. You do need that in here. You've got Arthur Machen, George MacDonald, H.G. Wells. Does it have... Who else is in here? Lafcadio Hearn is in here. Abraham Merritt's in here. You've got the original story version of The Moon Pool. That's worth it just in itself, because that was a good story. Ernest Brahma, Robert W. Chambers is in here. Yeah, it's an interesting selection because a lot of it is kind of more horror, perhaps, than what we would think of as fantasy. But again, public domain, man. You gotta get what you can get. And the next book I have in here is a pretty nice copy of William Shakespeare: The Complete Works. I've got another copy up there of this. This is a nice one, though. A really nice copy. This was one of the Barnes & Noble books from one of the original series of Barnes & Noble gifty leather-bound books, which were not quite as fancy as they are nowadays as far as decoration, but they were better constructed. Not much, perhaps, but they were a bit better constructed than the ones that they're making now. Still, really interesting book. What else? Oh, this is important because this is the greatest reference book possibly that's ever been made. This is the Creature Features, the Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Movie Guide. I've got a couple editions of this. This is the newer edition. I think this was published in 1999. So it has science fiction, horror, and fantasy film reviews, little capsule reviews for films from the 20th century, which means the good stuff, basically. Because all the good stuff was from the 20th century. So as a reference book for old horror, science fiction, and fantasy films from the 20th century, this can't be beat. John Stanley's Creature Features Movie Guide. John Stanley hosted Creature Features for years on Channel 2, the local Bay Area station, which I think is out of Oakland. It's out of Oakland, Channel 2, not San Francisco. It's out of Oakland, so yeah, I think. Let me know if I'm wrong. But yeah, Creature Features was on for years, and it was a great show. Oh, I'm glad I found this. This. Her Smoke Rose Up Forever, James Tiptree Jr. This is a magnificent book. This was a pseudonym by Alice Bradley Sheldon. Alice Bradley Sheldon used the James Tiptree Jr. name, and she wrote amazing science fiction stories, just super high quality. These stories stick with you forever. I can't speak highly enough about this author. Really, really, really great stories. So if you can get this volume, because this volume has a bunch of her best stories in it, get this volume. It's really, really good. What else do we have in here? Ross MacDonald, The Archer Files. So this is Ross MacDonald's short stories that he wrote about Lou Archer. He famously did one of the greatest series of detective novels ever about Lou Archer. And this is a collection of the short stories. So this is great. Oh, look at this. We've got the second Chronicles of Thomas Covenant. One of these boxes, I had the first Chronicles. Would it be nice if I had put all of these in boxes in order so when I finally unpack them, it's not going to be a huge disaster? But no, I didn't. It's going to be a huge disaster. But Stephen Donaldson, the second Chronicles of Thomas Covenant. I don't have the third Chronicles at all, I don't think. Next we have The Last Wish by Andrzej Sapkowski. I can't pronounce anything, but yeah, everybody knows The Witcher. He's on Netflix now, The Witcher. I saw the first series of shows, haven't seen the second one yet. Like the first series. And I like this book, The Last Wish. I mean, it wasn't the best written book in the world, but I liked it. As I liked this one as well. This is the second book, Sword of Destiny, which is the second series of short stories. After this, he wrote novels, which I haven't read yet, inexplicably. What else do we have? Oh, I'm going to pull a couple of these because I'm going to need them for some future Sunday Penguins. These are from the Penguin English Library, so they're pretty. This is The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. A future Sunday Penguin. Hold on to this one too, will you, pal? And The Beetle by Richard Marsh, another future Sunday Penguin. I don't think they do a Black Spine version of this, but you know what? If it's in the Penguin English Library, it counts as a penguin. So I will talk about The Beetle by Richard Marsh. That was a creepy book. And I've just got a cheap Barnes & Noble copy of Candide by Voltaire. And we've got Virginia Woolf, Orlando. You know, this random, man, random. This is a good one. This is The Beardless Warriors by Richard Matheson, a novel of World War II. He was a soldier in World War II, so he knows what he was talking about. This copy is a bit beat up, cover's a bit faded, but a really, really good book from what I remember. A few more books in here. Oh, No Man's Land by Simon Watson. The author of I, Universe, Daryl Sloan, talked about this book on his channel, DS. No Man's Land. I haven't read this yet, but Daryl Sloan says good things about this book, so I look forward to that. Here's another book I'm going to need in the near future. This is Isaac Asimov's Robots and Empire, the 4th robot novel. I just read Caves of Steel. I'm reading Isaac Asimov's robot novels, his Empire novels, and his Foundation novels. Probably not all this year, but I'm going to read them all. So I'm going to need this book in the near future. Sorry to pile all these on you, pal. Let's see. We've got an Oxford edition of Jules Verne's Journey to the Center of the Earth. Excellent book. That one's a lot of fun. We've got Albert Camus, The Stranger. Albert Camus, The Stranger. Good book, man. It's been a while since I've read it. I've got to read that again. This is random. This is an old beat-up Tarzan book, Tarzan, Lord of the Jungle. It's really old and tore up, this one. I don't know how it ended up in here, but here it is. The final book from this week's Books That Time Forgot is an old half-price books clearance book that I got for $1. This is Splinter in the Mind's Eye, the very first Star Wars novel that wasn't based on a movie. I think this is the second Star Wars novel to be released after the novelization of the film. Much like that book, this is by Alan Dean Foster. When this was written, George Lucas didn't know if Star Wars would be a hit and if he could make a sequel to the film. So this is a sequel to the film that if he could film it, he could film cheap. Because he felt like if I have to make a sequel and I don't have a ton of money to do it, this would have made a cheaper film than The Empire Strikes Back, which is a more ambitious and much better story. But this is still interesting. And you've got Darth Vader there, and the siblings there who aren't siblings yet. It's interesting. This is an interesting little bit of Star Wars history tucked away in this box. So yeah, that was this week's The Books That Time Forgot. I hope that you'd enjoy it. Catch me next week for 2 more books of boxes. Oh, the thrill! See ya.